This is Fairies and Madhog, and we are talking about Persona again.
I regret my decision.
But this is a different Persona, obviously. Welcome to Persona 1.
This looks like a corpse party game, honestly.
To be fair, it was originally released on the PS1. This, of course, right here is the PSP remake.
This whole video we are doing right now is merely an excuse to get the background for the series out as soon as possible, because I'm assuming it will take a lot of time to explain where this series started, before we inevitably jump right into that freaking unmitigated mess that is Persona 5.
Okay, so, hi, Oreo Soul.
Oh, and immediately starts off with the freaking Velvet Room theme. Oh, joy!
It's in every game in the series, but anyway.
Joy! What is the deal with that sugar daddy Igor and his prison fetish daughters anyway?
Well, to be fair, it only takes the form of a prison in Persona 5, but we'll get there. So let's start at the beginning. We actually chose the best game to talk about the Shin Megami Tensei Beta series with, because the original Persona is more or less just a Shin Megami Tensei game with the difficulty turned down.
You know, I'm curious to learn more about this franchise, because I know that Shin means new, I know Megami means goddess, I don't know what Tensei means, but I'm going to assume it means something cool. So I'm wondering, was there ever a Megami Tensei series and then the Shin was added later on because it was a reboot? How far does the rabbit hole go?
Okay, so the rabbit hole goes back to 1987 on the Famicom.
Like every major franchises, every major gaming franchises.
Yep. So.
Oh look! Oh gee, I sure love that isometric Fallout engine.
Yeah, again, PS1. Anyway, so back on the PS1, there was a game called Megami Tensei, which was actually based off of a novel.
Hold on. I thought it started in 87.
Yes.
So why was it on the PlayStation 1?
No, this particular game, Persona, is from later, but Megami Tensei starts in on the Famicom in 1987.
Yeah, you said Megami Tensei was on PS1.
There is PS1 Megami Tensei game, sorry. You
Okay,
said
you know
the
what? You're
isometric
confusing
graphics
me.
here.
You're just confusing me. Just
Oh god. Anyway,
I'm
so
already confused.
okay, so Megami Tensei on the Famicom, which is not what we're looking at on the screen right now, because there was no translation of this game
Thank
in
you.
existence, is a first-person dungeon crawler where you collect demons, very similar to like you do in the Persona series, and fuse them together, just like in the Persona series. And as I just mentioned, it's based off a novel.
Okay.
So there were two games, Megami Tensei and Megami Tensei 2, on the Famicom. Then on the Super Famicom, they released Shin Megami Tensei, which is where the series got its name. It's technically the Megami Tensei series, but everyone calls it the Shin Megami Tensei series because they never made another regular Megami Tensei game after that.
And it sounds cooler when you add Shin on it, even though it just means new.
Yes. So
So
anyway,
what does Tensei mean?
good question. I think it's Saga or something like that.
So wait, the goddess saga?
Yes.
Who's the goddess? Is it
s-
my goddess? Your goddess? Everyone's goddess? Everyone's goddess Pillow? Pillow goddess? Right, Ross? Am I right, Ross?
I think it was supposed to be, and yes, I get the jab. I think it was supposed to be a reference to the fact that you are summoning gods and demons from your psyche.
Okay,
That
but
goes all the way back to the original Megami Tensei.
it is specifically mentioning a goddess in the title, though.
Yes, to be fair, I'm not terribly familiar with the original Megami Tensei for reasons of, again, it's completely untranslated, so it's difficult to get anything solid about the game in English. Again, all I've been able to do is fire up a ROM and find out it's completely in Japanese. A first-person dungeon crawler and has all the same monsters that you find recurring throughout the rest of the franchise.
Okay,
including
but
stuff like Jack Frost and Pixieing, everything like that.
yes, I figured that Jack Frost is sort of a mascot.
He
for,
is
the
Atlas's
series.
mascot. He's the company's
Yes.
mascot.
Oh! My gosh, I'm so shocked by that revelation. Whoa!
Whoa!
Oh my gosh, it's a blackboard!
Shit, man.
Oh wait, I did not see the ghost. So,
So anyway, the Shin Megami Tensei series started to get popular in Japan in the Super Nintendo era, so they started making spin-off games to it, aside from the mainline games, which still continue to this day. So the spin-off games, the first one was Shin Megami Tensei If, which ended up being the, essentially the predecessor to Persona.
don't you just love these absurd, nonsensical titles?
Yes, I assumed it was supposed to be just a way of telling that it's not a mainline canon game. But anyway, they
So,
started
it's
releasing...
Megami Tensei if it was canon, but it's not. Ah, you know, Igor was a lot slimmer back then.
I am Philemon.
No, he is Philemon.
Dweller between consciousness
Of course, he's
He
not
is the
Igor.
person that made Igor.
and now. A simple
Well,
tip.
Do I
being that
care?
made
No,
Igor.
I don't.
No, you don't, but... you see all those butterflies that you see in every other Persona game? Like, that's him.
Yeah, you know, butterflies typically a representation of
Death.
in Japanese culture. I forgot a conjunction somewhere in this sentence, but you know what? I don't care. So,
But getting back
Right.
to Shin Megami Tensei, so around the PS1 and later, they started releasing a butt ton of spin-offs to Megami Tensei.
as you do.
Like, a ton of them. But the one that we are concerned with is Persona here, which was developed as a casual JRPG.
Yes, it was developed as a casserole RPG.
Yes,
Delicious. Delicious.
No, casual.
It's delicious.
With the idea being that the Shin Megami Tensei series was too hard for filthy Westerners, so we want to make an easy one for them. This game
And yet-
was in no way easy at all.
You know, it's funny they say that because Persona as a series is still very much entangled with Japanese culture to the point that it's kind of hard to sell to non-Japanese people.
Yeah,
And
well,
I noticed that it's been successful in spite of that.
yes.
At the end, I mean, it took 20 years.
Okay, so another thing to mention about this particular game is when Atlas decided to bring it over, bless their hearts, they thought, this isn't gonna fly in the Western, for the Western audience, we need to do stuff to it. So they
And-
did, and so came one of the most notoriously bad translations of a game ever to be done.
In return,
The only reason I'm not playing that, because it's far more humorous, is the fact that it's one of the more sought-after games on the PS1 in America, and fetches ludicrous prices because of that.
So
Because
you're
of how
playing
big
the
the series
PSP version instead.
Yes, which is far more faithfully translated and far easier to come by.
You know, I will have plenty of chances to talk about what I think about the localization of Persona 5 when the time comes, but Well, suffice it to say, wow, you speak Japanese!
Yes. Okay, so
Yes,
you remember the
yes.
guy with the weird hat that you saw briefly? Yeah, you see, what they did when they brought him over is they made him a black guy with a baseball cap.
Ah, so basically, that DJ from Jet Grind Radio made a cameo in
Kinda.
Persona 1. Or I should say Jet Set Radio, because we are, weeaboos and stuff.
Yes.
No, we're not, and I hate localizations that go so far and beyond to be faithful to the source material to the point that they actually make it worse than it could have been.
I think, honestly, localization-wise, this is about a nice, this is a nice even mark for it, where you still have, like, names being fairly intact, but you dropped clunky things like honorifics.
Yes, you should not have Japanese honorifics in English written sentences.
Well,
Or spoken sentences. You should not.
okay, let me try to explain this. Okay, so there's really no reason it needed to be there in Persona 5, honestly. There really wasn't. In Persona 4, it was actually kind of important because the character was nameless and didn't have a cool code name like Persona 5 has for the main character. So essentially, they had to come up with something for the characters to call him. Is spoken in game. So what they came up with is all the party members would call him Senpai, and the mascot character would call him Sensei.
Uh-huh.
And it's one of those things that it just would not translate over terribly well if you dropped all honorifics.
Okay, I'm surprisingly not against using Senpai, so much as I'm not hearing a name with kun or san or chan at the end.
I understand, but when they had
It is a weird double standard of mine, but I cannot help it.
But when they made that translation choice, they decided to keep the honorifics. I mean, I can't fault them for it at that point. Persona 5, it was completely unnecessary, and to be fair, they also had no real reason to do it in Persona 3 either, and they totally kept it there. I think basically what happened is the translation of Persona 1 was so awful and so hated that Atlas was so scared of pissing off everyone again, they were just like, okay.
So they went the completely opposite route and, gave localization duties to the most weeaboos American companies available.
Pretty much. I mean, that's my my headcanon for that, at least.
Your fan headcanon fan that shreds the meat and the
yes! Delicious.
Okay, so tell me more about Persona 1 as far as the story is concerned, because so far we have been all over the place trying to grasp our minds towards what the heck is all of this.
So I'm gonna be completely honest. I have not personally gotten terribly far in Persona 1 on my own playthrough because of mechanics we will discuss in a bit when we get to the gameplay side. But basically what happens is the population of this city gets trapped in it and demons start roaming around. And you need to try to figure out why that be. It's
in what they are trapped?
They are trapped inside the city.
When you say the city, you mean the representation of the city inside the metaverse, or
no, an actual physical city.
Oh,
there was no metaverse. There was no parallel world, to my knowledge, in Persona 1. This is all taking place in our reality.
So, I notice you have a party immediately.
Yes.
Just from the start, you already have 4 guys. You don't have to meet them gradually and get to know them, and you are not thrown into a horribly transparently written story with a one-dimensional villain to get your juice going, so to speak. Now you already have 4 guys just stuck with you from the start.
Yep, that's how it goes.
So is there that mechanic of life simulation aspect to it, that you have to do a series of things with a specific time limit in mind? Do you do all that here? No?
Nope, that's completely gone. This is a standard freaking JRPG.
I think I might have preferred this to be had in Persona 5, because the way Persona 5 was structured, it was structured to be extremely addicting, and the time limit constraints only made it all the more pressurizing on my mind, so to speak. The struggle was real and all that.
The struggle was real. Also, you save a giant pink tree in this.
Of course, a sakura tree would be the symbol of your
Hey, that
saving,
place
because...
looks familiar.
So the Velvet Room is like a janitor room in this school?
That's actually like a mall, but yeah.
Also, I have to say, nice music, nice song in the background. It does not mellow myself out of existence like I'm a chef chauffeur with this masquerade.
Yeah, so, with Persona 1, there is no life sim aspects, there is no hanging out with people, you don't have social stats. You
don't have a social life.
Correct. You basically are given party members. Now, the unique thing about Persona 1 is that there's actually a butt ton of endings in it. So basically, when you get small decisions about who you want to go with at certain points in the game. So basically, and once you select certain characters to go with, you're basically locked into the particular story path, which can be wildly different than someone else's. So there is actually a bit of replay value here.
That is interesting and might actually make me want to play this game more, if I found the characters interesting at all, that is, because that's always a big unknown element in these games. If you don't like the characters, you have no reason to replay it, now do you?
Correct. In this particular game...
Foreshadowing!
In this particular game, the characters are pretty thin from as far as I've gotten. Again, I did not get super far in the game.
So basically typical JRPG affair in that regard.
Yeah, pretty much, at least in that stance. Again, this is a PlayStation 1 era JRPG, so, and one that was on one disc, no less. So you're not talking about, like, an epic like Final Fantasy VII that had, like, 1 million hours of gameplay. I was just using that as, like, a popular example. Don't, nail me to the wall for even bringing up Final Fantasy VII, because half the internet wants to.
I've been extremely judgmental about Final Fantasy VII. But you know what? It's not that bad at the end. I mean, considering how the series just descends into complete idiocy as the years go by, Fantasy VII was much better in comparison, even though the story makes no sense and the villain less so.
Pretty much.
And all the criticisms we've heard 1 million times before,
yes.
And I don't think anybody really wanted a remake of that game, and they kept saying they did, but they will all regret this decision, because now we're getting that remake, and that remake is being made by modern day Square Enix, not by Square as it was back in the day.
Yeah.
So yes, the same guys responsible for shoving lightning into everyone's throat for 10 years.
Yes.
Those are going to be making your beloved remake of Final Fantasy VII. Enjoy that! Oh, and it's going to be episodic!
Okay, so, also, since I do not have it to play, I am going to touch upon Persona 2 in this video as well. Persona 2 is a direct sequel to Persona 1. Some of the cast from Persona 1 actually do pop up in it. So, familiarity with Persona 1 is helpful. Persona 2 is also bizarre because Persona 2 is actually 2 games.
So you told me, but I know that Persona 3 is also technically 2 games.
Not quite. We'll get into that when we get to Persona 3.
Because apparently we will get to Persona 3.
Yes, we will. But, so with Persona 2...
oh no! Something's happening!
Sick girl is sick! Oh no!
It's the enemy! I need backup! I saw the exclamation points.
Sick girl is sick. Anyway. So with Persona 2, the first part of it was never translated in English back in the day. We got the second part of Persona 2. Eternal Punishment.
Eternal Punishment.
Yes.
Really?
So, and that's the game that you fight and kill Hitler in. So, that's about the only thing people remember Persona 2 for.
Who?
Hitler.
Oh wow.
Okay, so basically in both Persona 2 games, there's a mechanic called the rumor system. And the rumor system basically, anything that goes around that people, like any rumors that go around become true.
I was positive that was the ICU a moment ago.
Okay.
So that's like the supernatural element of that. So, the party does eventually take advantage of this to turn things in their favor, but one of the rumors that goes around is that Hitler is alive.
Oh my god.
So, Hitler is alive.
Okay, that seems like a dumb but simultaneously really good premise for any kind of over-the-top story.
So
I will have to say. So, if there are rumors about Donald Trump being pregnant with Vladimir Putin's child...
if it spreads far enough, that will become real.
Jeez. Might as well be real.
Oh, jeez. Anyway, so now they're fighting zombies.
Okay, I'm immediately losing interest towards this game.
Okay, so here comes the first battle.
So is it going to have a first-person perspective? No, it doesn't. But it's taking us into a completely different dimension on a nice little platform, floating in the ether, What's with this song? What's with this song? Actually, never mind. I don't want to know.
Headbang to death.
This is so stupid, but so good. Yes, let's be silent and listen to the music for the next hour or so.
No. But as you can see, the combat system is different. You still have strengths and weaknesses, but they aren't as important to note as later entries of the franchise. You do not get additional attacks off of exploiting them.
I see.
Okay, so we're going to be getting to the mechanic that I loathe in this game shortly. But wrapping up on Persona 2, so on the original PS1, only the second part was released in English. So what they did is they only released the first part of the 2 remakes on PSP in English.
Huh.
So literally, there are 2 Persona 2 games that never got an English release.
Well, this is
bizarre.
puzzling.
It's weird. And also, Persona 2 is actually even more expensive than Persona 1, so, yeah, that's why I do not possess it.
I think I would have been very invested in the idea of fighting Hitler.
Yes.
It's like It is so over the top as an idea, as a concept, that you cannot help but being invested. In that regard, I feel like Persona 5 did not go over the top enough. Nearly enough.
But what do you go after you've beaten Hitler, though? I mean, you can only
Yes,
pull Hitler once.
exactly. Well, what about Hitler fused with Godzilla? You know, Godzilla with Hitler's head. You know,
Oh,
reborn as a
God.
gigantic lizard. You know, that's a nice final boss.
Now, another thing about Persona 2 is they had to censor Hitler.
Oh,
So
boo!
So he's called the
The
and-
Führer.
the Führer, and he has sunglasses on.
So cool! Hitler with sunglasses.
Yes.
This is the best censorship since the invisible penis in a hentai I once watched.
Okay, so here we go. So
I mean,
what about the-
I heard about invisible guns, but that's
Yes.
ridiculous.
Okay, so here we go. This is I'm about to show you the thing that I hate about this game. How
Okay.
you have to get personas. So it's not dissimilar from Persona 5 system where you have to negotiate with demons. Only it's far more obtuse.
Okay.
See all these different choices that you have here? You have to kind of guess what the type of monster likes you to say to them.
Sarcasm is an option.
Yes.
Sarcasm should always be an option when you're fighting monsters.
And
Okay.
this is a trademark mechanic of the Shin Megami Tensei series as a whole.
You're not really explaining anything right now.
So basically, your actions fill up these 4 gauges. So the more that so basically you want to get happy and eager up as much as possible. That makes it easier that makes a better chance of them giving you a spell card, which is what you use to actually fuse up a persona. However, if you get their anger up, which is extremely easy to do, you actually buff all of the enemies, and they get free attacks on you.
Yes. That's something that's retained also in the latest game.
Yes, well, to be fair, it disappeared after Persona 2 and came back in Persona 5.
Much
But-
better implemented, though.
Yes, that's, again, the problem is you could at least somewhat guess what a demon would want to hear. They don't even tell you the nature of the demon in this. You know how you had the 4 natures in Persona 5?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had the exact same 4 natures in there, only you didn't have the game literally tell you what demon was what. So you had to have an FAQ open at all times for demon negotiation to get anywhere in this game, which is what killed it for me. Because
Okay,
again,
so-
I have it on the PSP, I'm not gonna carry a piece of paper with a chart of all demon negotiations and choices that they like, when there's over 100 different ones in the game.
I understand that. I'm having trouble following the storyline here because the game seems to be jumping all over the place from location to location.
Okay, so they're in a hospital. They basically went to a hospital to get checked out after the lightning struck them and they were unconscious. And then as soon as they got to the hospital, something weird happened, and now the hospital's completely rearranged and there are demons roaming around.
Yes, I like this game better when it was called Silent Hill 2, thank you very much.
But that is the plot as it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to fight your way out of the hospital.
Seems straightforward enough, I guess.
Now, something that is... you get, SP... You get SP replenished a lot more often in this game than say Persona 5, where if you run out of SP, you're basically screwed. As you notice, like, I've been using personas, but, you know, my, SP hasn't exactly dwindled yet, has it?
No, it has not. But to be fair, in Persona 5, I actually learned fairly early to manage my SPs at the best way I could. And because I was so good in that department, I was able to raid entire palaces all in one go.
Yeah, that's the true mark of an expert Persona player. Tackling dungeons without in one shot.
Thank you very much.
But as you can see for the rest of the playthrough, I don't even bother trying to negotiate with demons. Just because I'm so terrible at it.
So it is necessary to beat the game to collect Persona?
Oh yeah! Because your starting Persona, just like in every other Persona game, is crap. So you're going to need to fuse up better ones, and fusing works more or less how it does in later games of the franchise. But if you get a spell card from a Persona, you don't immediately get to use that Persona. You have to fuse the 2 spell cards to make a Persona, to begin with. And you can't do that until the Velvet Room opens up. So, yeah. To be fair, the Velvet Room did not open up in the hour that I recorded here.
Okay, that's indeed fair, but explain this to me. What is the deal with the Velvet Room?
Okay, so the best way to put it is it was a place for you to fuse personas and do other necessary gameplay things. And
no,
so
I mean in universe. Why does it exist?
It's basically Philemon's way of helping you, more or less. But storyline-wise, it really never serves much of a purpose. To the point that in the later anime adaptations of Persona 3 and Persona 4, you could literally have removed the Velvet Room in its entirety. It would have made no difference to the plot as it was.
You know,
it's mostly there for gameplay mechanics.
You know, I would have preferred that Persona 5 did not implement the Velvet Room in the actual story. And I'll explain to you why, because otherwise there is absolutely no reason why the main character could not have told his friends that he's getting powers by this crazy sugar daddy and his prison fetish daughters when he visits him every night.
To be fair, in previous games, you tried to tell your party members about that, and they don't believe you.
But they are literally traveling into these crazy palaces that are representations of somebody's distorted desires.
Well, as far as they see, you're just kind of zoning out, staring at nothing from their perspective. And that's consistent with all games in the franchise.
With all that they have seen, you'd think that they would believe him if he told them, hey, the reason why I can have multiple personas, which no one else of you can, is because of this guy in this room that's giving me this power.
In Persona 1 and 2, everyone can wield multiple personas.
Oh, for crying out loud! Then there is nothing special about you, is it?
In this game, no. Actually, you're not really even a self-insert dude. Your character does actually have a name.
I would also have preferred if that were to be the case in Persona 5 and the other games as well, because the silent self-insert protagonist doesn't really work in this series, especially if you give this supposed silent protagonist actual spoken lines of dialogues, actual voice clips.
Yeah, it gets worse because remember, Persona 3 and 4 have had anime adaptations. Think about that.
Yes, so there is absolutely no reason for a silent protagonist that's not really actually silent.
But the protagonist is mostly silent, in especially Persona 3's adaptation, which is awful. It's a series of 4 movies, but I'm gonna tell you right now, like,
I know they're bad.
3 of the 4 of them are awful. The last one basically takes place in the good part of Persona 3's story and is okay because of that. But it's just, you have this problem where you have this, again, nothing of a main character, and there's 2 ways to go with it. You either keep him as a nothing of a main character and give some kind of in-game excuse why his personality is so weak, or you give him a freaking character. They decided to go with the former, to everyone's dismay. The guy doesn't even freaking laugh until the 3rd movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't, like, crack a genuine smile until then.
Yeah. Yes. Well.
That's a problem.
Okay, so the only time I think the trope, the cliche of the silent RPG protagonist really worked was in Undertale. And the reason why that worked, it's because they were using the silent protagonist archetype to comment on the use of the silent protagonist archetype in this sort of games.
Yes.
So it was a deconstruction of the cliche, not a earnest use of said cliche. And that's why it worked! Because this cliche is so distasteful that you have to make fun of it. You have to actually swerve your audience with it to make it valuable.
To try to at least give some credit, they basically do in Persona 4's anime adaptation give the silent protagonist actually a fairly snarky personality as the story goes on. He doesn't talk much, but most of what he talks is some kind of smart-ass remark to something. Usually with a deadpan face. So it does end up being quite humorous when they do it.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not, again, it's not the best possible thing to do, but it's better than Persona 3's choice. It's also voiced by Johnny Young Bosch in English, which tends to add a lot of personality to the character. And there's a thunderstorm going on outside, so that's going to show up in the recording. I can't help acts of God.
Well, I'll edit the audio recording at the very least, so I'll see what I can do.
But regardless. Okay, so obviously we're still trying to touch upon Persona 1 as much as possible.
What else is there to be said?
The fact that the PSP release actually restored some content from the original PS1 release in English. Like, there was an entire character's ending route, essentially, that was completely stripped from the game.
And just like the guy says, woo! He goes, woo! When he killed the monster. Nice.
Killed a pixie, no less. Grrr.
Woo!
Don't worry, you will see Jack Frost before this is done.
Chopping her to death.
Yep. Choppity chop chop.
Okay, I've seen this British strong style match at some point, and a guy was chopped so hard he bled from the pectoral muscles.
Jeez.
That was amazing.
Wow.
And he it was so tough. He just no-sold it completely. Even though it was actually legitimately bleeding. Woo!
Whoa! My axe! Whoa!
Woo! Alright, so we could do this for the remaining, however remaining minutes we have.
But yeah, in the Shin Megami Tensei, you'll see certain, like, demons popping up over and over. Like, you'll always see Pixie, you'll always see Jack Frost. In fact, you'll always see, like, most of the Jacks. So you'll see, the, Jack-o'-lantern one. Is it called, like,
yes.
Yeah, you know
Jack-o'-lantern, yes.
Yes.
Oh, by the way,
yes?
I'll be taking this time to say this, but I've obtained a Black Frost right towards the end of the game by fusing the Jack-o'-lantern with the Jack Frost and the King Frost. King Frost is adorable, by the way.
Yes, he is. And then Black Frost is...
Look at me! Look at me, I'm the king!
And Black Frost is actually one of the better personas in the game, so in most of the games that he appears in.
It is, and by the way, I fused him, because he was the original result of a fusion. I gave him also some good old curse-based spells.
Nice.
Because I actually made sure to have multiple personas with multiple elemental abilities.
It's a good thing to do.
Yes.
Especially when you can just R1 and just find whatever you have that gives you a type advantage.
I really like that about the gameplay in Persona 5. Again, the gameplay in that game is very efficient and very addicting.
I will say
the story is the problem, though.
I will say one thing about the later Persona games is they actually do a lot to add a lot of convenience to the player. Quick travel, auto recover, being able to just hit R1 and find whatever you have that has a advantage. It's really considerate to the player's time and effort.
Yes, also, that manages to be less grind-heavy in terms of how much levels you need to grind to be prepared for a specific dungeon. Because if you can play up on the various advantages... disadvantages based upon elements of the enemies you're fighting, then you can have a very easy life in fighting them, and grinding becomes less vital.
Yes. So, the bad thing about that is if you quick travel everywhere, you can miss a lot of just cool little things that Atlas is stuck in the game all over the place. Like, there are just tiny details everywhere in Persona 5. Like, everywhere. Like, here's one that you may not have noticed. Okay, in this one point in the story, there is a character that eventually joins your party, Makoto, that is following you around wherever you go and is being really conspicuous about it.
I've noticed her. At least once. I definitely noticed her. She's being so transparent.
She will follow you wherever you go. And do, like, the most... It's one of those things that if you quick travel everywhere, though, you're not going to notice it.
Here goes.
Well, I did notice it at some point, so yes. But to be fair, I did not care much for, those type of details and the characters in that game, because I was too focused on, oh no, I have to get this confident rank to level up as soon as possible. I need to level up my guts so that I can be daunting. And I
need my guts!
So that I can talk to that girl or something.
I need to take more shady medicine.
Yes, that's something.
Regardless, so as you can see, Persona 1 can be a little hard to go back to. The combat system is bare bones, and something you have noticed is that all of your attacks have various ranges on them, and you can't move your characters in mid-combat.
Woo!
So if you have a character that's not in range to attack them, you can't do anything about it. You either have to use, like, a gun, which you'll eventually get. This is also one of the only games in the series that uses guns, besides Persona 5. Or use a Persona attack. You really don't have a choice. So that was a little obtuse, and something that they dumped later on in the franchise. Let's see, what other things are worth mentioning about Persona 1? Let's see, the game was not successful in the East at all. The crappy localization, not making too many copies, and the fact that really, there's nothing about it that stands out here on the PS1. Like, think
Well,
about it.
yes,
Like, if
to be
this...
fair, the PS1 was probably the height of the popularity when it comes to JRPG.
Mhm.
In fact, it had the most variety in terms of lineup, not just the Final Fantasy games, but also something like
Tales
Project.
of Destiny, you had,
Yes, I was about to say Project Eva.
Project,
Was it?
yeah. Parasite Eve, I think is what you're
Parasite Eve, yes. I don't know why I said Project Eva.
thinking of. You have,
Whatever.
Chrono Cross, you have, Legend of Dragoon. I mean, there's just no shortage of JRPGs
Oh,
to
and
play.
don't forget the remake of Chrono Trigger with those Akira Toriyama animated cutscenes.
Is good. That's how I first played Chrono Trigger, honestly. But regardless, I didn't even care about the loading times. But the point is, this game completely got lost in the shuffle for good reasons. As I said, there's not much that stands out about it.
Mhm.
It wasn't using 3D graphics at a time that everything was using 3D graphics.
Even though those 3D graphics really did not age well.
Yeah, I mean, Persona 1 may be easier to look at because of that these days, but at the time, it was a firm check against it. It wasn't this huge multi-disc epic like most other RPGs at the time were. And again, it was from a relatively small studio. Atlus had been around, but Atlus really did not have much of a name presence.
I see.
Especially in the West here. So it was kind of being released by a more or less unknown developer. So it wasn't like, it was Squaresoft releasing like this game or publishing it or something. So it had everything stacked against it. So it didn't do well.
Unsurprising.
It's amazing that we even got the very limited release of Persona 2 we did.
What's interesting about Persona to me is that even though it's supposed to be a spin-off of a larger meta-series, this spin-off saga alone is actually 20 years old by this point.
Yes.
And what's even more remarkable is that 10 of those 20 years are just Persona 4.
Yes. Persona 4 is its own unique whole that we will discuss at length when we get to it. But
If we get to it.
we will.
I guess I don't have a choice in that.
After this we will talk about Persona 3 after an hour of gameplay, and then we will do Persona 4.
And then finally, we shall tackle the insanity and just offensive stupidity that is the Persona 5 story, and we will also talk about gameplay, because why not? But mostly the story.
We had the Persona 4 spin-off games.
No! 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 And also no.
But the fighting games were developed by the same people that did BlazBlue.
I don't care.
And there's a DS game that is basically an old school dungeon crawler.
I care don't.
And there's a rhythm game that no one likes.
Care I do not.
Okay, well, to go back to a thing that you had actually mentioned earlier that just popped into my head about Persona 3. Okay, so there are not two Persona 3 games per se. So here's how it worked. There was the original Persona 3, then they re-released Persona 3 with an upgrade known as Persona 3 FES, which has the original game in its entirety with some upgrades, and it also has a second campaign to it, essentially. It's not its own unique game because it uses basically all of the existing assets and everything from Persona 3, but it is a different storyline. And there's Jack Frost.
My gosh, he had better days.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be summer. He's starting to melt.
Regardless, so the second campaign, known as The Answer, is where they completely replace the bland main character with a robot. This is a thing that really happened.
Wait, wasn't there a Persona 3 game in which you play as the female lead?
Yeah, I'm about to get to that. So there is then after Persona 4 release, they ported Persona 3 to the PSP.
Yes.
However, because they had to make so many compromises to the main game, specifically, they couldn't fit all of the game worlds in there, along with the massive tower that you have to climb. So in order to make the concessions for the hardware, they ended up basically all the social sim part is on basically still images where you click on various parts on it to interact with them, instead of moving a character around the game world much like, Persona 5 that you're used to.
That saves time.
It saves time, it does, but it hurts immersion, which was one of the strong points of the game, the series, in fact. But anyway, so because they had to make that concession for hardware, in order to kind of utilize that free space, they added a second playable character, a female protagonist. Who,
Wow, so that is the only case in which this series has a female lead.
Yes.
And
Well,
it's
actually,
under
not necessarily.
very contrived
Hold on.
circumstances.
Persona 2 has a female lead.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment has a female lead named Maya.
But is it the player character or...
Yes, it's the player character.
Oh. Okay. That's good.
Okay, but anyway, so, going back to Persona 3 Portable, basically what the female protagonist mode is, it's not just swapping the main character model and being done with it. All the social links, or confidants in Persona 5, are changed to accommodate this.
So now you can only date boys and not girls.
Yes, you can only date the male characters.
That's a
true.
problem that I find with this series.
But, hold on, there are also different social links that are available to the character in general. And also the music selections are mostly different.
Okay.
So, they actually changed things up quite a bit for basically what was more or less a tacked-on mode.
Okay, you could have discussed this once we got to actually, discuss Persona 3 in the appropriate video.
There will be a lot to discuss there. But you had already brought this question up earlier, so I had to clarify it.
So, the Persona hole, turns out, is very deep.
Oh, yes.
And getting out of it is very difficult. I should know about that.
Yes.
Huh. So,
still thundering
how
outside. Fun.
does the metaverse come from all of this situation?
The metaverse is an invention specifically of Persona 5.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Now,
So,
there
what was...
Go ahead.
So, what was there in the other games?
Okay, in Persona 3, there was something called the Midnight Hour, which was basically a hitting hour between one day and the next. So basically, at the stroke of midnight, most of the world would go into coffins and be safe from the shadows in this hitting hour.
I guess.
However, only those that had awakened to their persona abilities, or those called out by the shadows, would be aware of it. So, if you're
And-
called out by the shadow, basically the shadow attacks you and eats you, and then you get something called apathy syndrome, which basically is the mental shutdown syndrome from Persona 5.
I was going to say, is it suicidal depression?
Yes,
Clinical depression?
it's suicidal
No, it's-
depressing. It's to the point that you literally lose the will to do anything, and become
Wow.
a drooling zombie.
That seems far more interesting thematically than anything Persona 5 had to propose.
So that was Persona 4 had something called the TV world. Where,
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, the main character finds out that he can literally dive into TVs and,
Yes.
and enter this place called the TV world where the shadows look in this game. And now what happens is someone from the outside is throwing people into this TV world. And when you're there, you eventually encounter your own shadow. And
Okay.
and because the shadow by nature is the part of you that you deny, if you deny it, which is very difficult to not do without someone intervening, it will go berserk and kill you.
Again,
So-
this seems thematically far more interesting than anything Persona 5 could possibly throw
So-
at me.
What happens is, now there are these bodies showing up in this small town, and your group of main characters becomes aware of this TV world and the situation. You realize, oh crap, people aren't just wandering in here, someone's literally throwing innocent people into this place.
I just love this image of somebody just knocking down a door to somebody's living room, apartment, and just grabs them physically and just throws them inside the TV. Maybe they were watching the news on the TV. It's just so rude.
It is!
This is
So-
hilarious.
So, the overarching story is figuring out who's doing it in Persona 4 while saving people that get thrown into it.
Okay, so we've discussed pretty much the entire series, more than we discussed Persona 1 so
Well,
far, but
again, there's not a lot to talk about in Persona 1, unfortunately.
fair enough.
Again, it's a very standard JRPG that's more of a standard Shin Megami Tensei game than anything else.
As you have
Okay.
seen for yourselves.
So again, it's just, as I put before, it's Shin Megami Tensei on easy mode.
I see.
So
I have to say,
fortunately- yes?
something that I noticed, and this is me nitpicking, because that's something I do
Yes.
occasionally. The
Occasionally.
transition, it's justified more often than none. The transition in between the world exploring parts, which are in a first person perspective, to the battle scenes, it's a bit jarring. Also to the cutscenes, it's a bit
Yeah.
jarring because you jump from a first person perspective to a isometric 3D perspective. I don't know, they seem like they don't mesh well in the same context, but that's just me.
To be fair, this wasn't necessarily against the style at the time. I mean, that's basically how most RPGs of the era, or at least not quite the same, but it wasn't uncommon to find games, especially in the first-person perspective, that did stuff like that. Okay, well, we are just about out of Persona 1 here.
Yeah, well,
we have
I
reached
guess
the conclusion of the 1 hour playthrough.
we have. I guess we'll see you next time for more Personas!
Yes, next time we will be playing Persona 3 Portable.
Well, to be more specific, you would be playing it, and then record it, and then we shall talk over it, not even acknowledging what is going on. in the actual playthrough. For the most part. Well, unless somebody is attacking someone else and yelling, woo! In that case, it's definitely worth noting.
Okay, well, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I hope you join us for our next thing.
Yes, our next thing, which is a thing.
You know what? We should call this series the Persona Hole.
The Persona Hole. I guess it's a serviceable title for a retrospective, because this is essentially a very casual retrospective of the franchise, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, okay then. See you next time for the next exciting episode of the Persona Hole. Once you
Persona.
fall in, you never get out.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Took a mask off the